hockey. Yeah.
My favorite.
It's Judd's Hockey Show.
And welcome into a Monday edition of Judd's Hockey Show, because we have some breaking news that I guess we can't consider to be completely surprising, involving a Wild goaltender. It's Judd. It is Declan as we crawl towards the start of training camps. Tomorrow is the start of August. Training camps obviously will start in September. Before we get to that breaking news, though, Declan Goff, I want to talk to you about something that's very important if you're a Minnesota sports fan. That is throttle therapy, brought to you by our friends, look at that, at Miller Marine and Power Lodge, giving you the keys to a cool lake breeze with clearance pricing on 2023 luxury pontoons, fishing boats, and more. It's outstanding. You can go from floor to shore today with the iconic Bennington pontoon that you're looking at, and tri-tune packages at doorbuster pricing at Miller Marine, which is located in St. Cloud, and all Power Lodge locations. It is a fantastic way, especially if you're a hockey fan, because you know all about cold winters. Mm-hmm. It is a fantastic way to spend your summer when the ice turns to water. Get that Bennington, get that tri-tune on the water and enjoy it. Just head to millermarine.com and powerlodge.com and snag some of that throttle therapy today. And speaking of that, I think Wild GM Declan Goff, Bill Guerin, can get some throttle therapy now that he has the last piece of the Wild's puzzle, as he avoided arbitration, which was set for August 4th with goaltender Filip Gustavsson. Give us the specifics on the Gustavsson contract that came out today.
Okay, so we have a 3-year contract for Filip Gustavsson, $11.25 million deal. That's an AAV, average annual value, of $3.75 million. He has a 5-team no-trade clause that kicks in only during the final year of his contract on July 1st, 2025. Per The Athletic. That was a source that told The Athletic that in the negotiation process. Last year, Gustafsson, 22-9-7 record, 210 GAA and 931 save percentage. And after this, from a cap side, the Wild have $1.6 million in cap space left. Obviously, Kalen Addison maybe being this last domino to fall, whether that's him getting re-signed for pennies on the dollar, whether that's another trade coming to free up more cap space, or whether that's just Kalen Addison being traded outright in general, if not the combination of the first two things I said. So that is the skinny here, Judd. So Gustafsson locked up to a 3-year contract.
Yeah, and in Kalen's case, he has no arbitration rights, so he is basically screwed.
Yeah.
So he's not going to have, it's not like he can try and drive that price up, and if he does, of course, he will be traded. You are the goaltending sort of whisperer of this show, so I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Flower is back, obviously.
Yep.
Jesper Wallstedt is at some point in time going to become probably the top goaltender for this team. He'll be entering year 2 in Iowa. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's going to spend the whole season there or not, but clearly the Wild's not prepared to have him graduate to the National Hockey League yet. So what is your reaction to this agreement that avoids arbitration?
I mean, it's fine. I like that it gives them flexibility. $3.7 million isn't a ton. Right now they have Fleury and Gustafsson under contract for basically the same price. Gus at 3.7, the Flower for 3.5. So you're only spending 8.7% of your salary cap right now on the goaltending side of things, which I actually like.
That's a
still
Declan
a
plan,
very
right?
low number. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That's still a very low number. You're only giving 7. I mean, you're seeing other goalies getting signed for, those max deals that are $8 to $9 million. So I like it from a 3.7 side. I know I told you and Jess just last week that I would even entertain trading him and finding your other replacement. I mean, Filip Gustavsson might have been out of the NHL at this point last year. I mean, if he didn't get a shot with the Wild in the Cam Talbot trade. So I think in general, it's fine. And you can probably even move that contract once Jesper Wallstedt is indeed here. You can always find those guys. But the Wild have stuck to their plan of not overcommitting and overpaying for goaltending. That is something that has been done through this regime, past regimes. Don't overpay for goaltending. And in my opinion, even though Gus is riding just basically 50, 60 games of a small sample size of really good play, you're not giving him a long-term deal. Yep. You didn't break the bank. I'm fine with this plan.
Yeah. It seems very fair. It seems like it certainly is not a stretch or an overpay. And I love this too. So I have long said this, and it continues to be the case. Sports Dad hates National Hockey League contracts, not because of term necessarily, not because of money necessarily, but because of the no trades, right? Like they give them out, I've always said this, like they're candy, the no move clauses. A 5-team no trade in year 3 seems incredibly fair because I think that if Gustavsson turns out to be solid but not great, that there's a chance he gets moved before that.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
The more I've thought about this, and we have certainly broken this down a lot from your perspective on this show, I think not committing, I mean, if you're going to win, you need solid goaltending. But as we saw with the Golden Knights, more importantly is your defense, right? Mm-hmm. Big defensemen that can put their boot in somebody's butt. That's more important than just, oh my God, the goaltender, the days of the goaltender standing on his head by himself are probably gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that this is incredibly fair. Now tell me this too. I've gone back and forth on this question, Declan. With a roster pretty much set, unless there's a surprise move here for 2023-24, what's your expectation right now? So like what's your regular season? Let's, for the time being, forget playoffs because it's been a gong show and we don't know. But what is your regular season expectation for the Minnesota Wild?
Fringe playoff team.
Okay.
Fringe playoff team. Coming down from 100 points pretty hard. I think you're maybe looking at 88 to 91 points. I don't think you're not falling off the map and you're not going to be necessarily firmly in the lottery next season. Still think they're good enough to be competitive. But for next season, I would say a fringe playoff team. I think everyone in the Central has kind of gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Wild have gotten better. And I know the salary cap problems are the biggest reason for them not being able to make additions or not being able to just make their team overall better. But I think in general, I would call them a fringe playoff team. This is probably the least excited I have been about a upcoming Wild season in like the last 4 pre-Kaprizov. In the Kaprizov era, this one going into the season is probably the least I have been excited for, if that makes sense.
So a fringe playoff team is what, 93 points?
Yeah.
95 points, because now with the multitude of points available, it certainly has changed. I think you're probably right, but here's why I think you're right, too. They're a fringe playoff team if they do this right, unless they get completely surprised. Because I think what you have to do, I'm hoping, is you have to be committed, in my opinion, in the coming season, more to development than like veteran guys who are going to milk points, if that makes sense. So, because I think that you could make a run, there's a case to be made, that there's a possibility that you could make a run at the success of a year ago if you were to try to get as many points as possible, and that means scratching Rossi, right? Mm-hmm. That means Duhaime stays on the 4th line, perhaps, things like that. But I think the important thing, and I don't know if the Wild's going to do this or not, I think the most important thing is to say we have a window here in which we got a ton of prospects, and they have some really nice prospects. That's where they're blessed, and that's a credit to them, Bill Guerin and Judd Brackett. But yeah, I think they're a fringe playoff team if they do it right, which is we're going to have to find out right now.
Yeah.
And there's no better time than the next couple of years to develop them. So when you do come out of cap hell, and keep in mind too, the cap could go up, I think, fairly significantly for the first time in forever a year from now. So they might not be considered to be in cap hell, even with the Parise and Suter contracts and buyouts still on the books. But yeah, I'm with you, but I think you're a fringe playoff team because you say we got to look at guys too. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not going to go out and make trades for, no names. We're not going to do something to try and, because at some point in time, I think you have to use the regular season. And I think the Wild did. It just fell short as also a platform to find out what you have for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think you have to just figure out what you have in all these other prospects and the players. So if you can't fill out your roster with mainstay NHL players because of your salary cap problems, then you may as well play Marco Rossi. You may as well try to call up some of these prospects too that to see if they're legit NHL players. Yeah, I think the only thing remaining basically this offseason is Kalen Addison, and then is there a surprise trade to give you more wiggle room so you're not completely pennies against the dollar by the time training camp opens up. And I think the guys that probably fall into that bin are Foligno, And maybe Fleury, if Fleury didn't want to, but I don't think Fleury wants to move anywhere because
if he wanted to, right?
Yes, if he absolutely
to a
wanted
contender,
to.
possibly, yeah.
So,
but no, he won't. I think you're right.
So then it comes down to would they trade Marcus Foligno and maybe Kalen Addison just to give them more salary cap space and to create a more?
Foligno's going nowhere, man. I think
don't think
Bill
so either.
Guerin loves him because I think it was Jesse who first brought up the subject of trading him. Which, you know what, if you could get a good trade for him, yeah. But I don't think so. I think they love him, and he is a good guy. I mean, he's a great room guy. The reality, though, is at some point in time, more importantly than trying to get 100 points, which is nice, you have to put your finger on why you're not advancing in the playoffs. Because the disturbing thing, Dex, is this. The last 2 years, they've gotten bounced in the first round with very different teams. Because, you went into the playoffs last year with a team where you're like, okay, this isn't a huge team, but it's got Orion Reeves. It certainly looks like a more physical team that could get you at least through a round. And the first 3 games or so against Dallas were fun and they were great. And after that, you completely went back to regression in the playoffs. So that's the other thing is you're going to have to decide who fits and who doesn't fit for the long term. And I think that there might have to be, not right now, but I think there might have to be tough decisions made on players and on the coach.
Yep. And you have to figure out, too, okay, so you have Kaprizov here, still here for, I believe, 3 more years, right? And can you convince him enough that if you have a couple stalled seasons, basically, in years 3 and 4 of this contract, can you convince him that you're going to be able to re-sign him again once the bidding war comes back to being open again when he's an unrestricted free agent? Because I don't see, unless they really pop up and their agent, I don't know who Kirill's agent is, I don't see him giving the Wild the opportunity to re-sign him until he hits free agency. I think Kirill's going to want to go on the open market, at least how it stands now.
Explore Los Angeles, New York.
I can just see him wanting to get a big bag, and he should get one. He already got one.
From a big team,
from a bigger market, and a team that's probably closer to a Stanley Cup, unless the Wild really surprises here in these next 2 seasons, which I don't really think they're going to do.
And one thing that really frustrates me that we see for sure, Declan, is this. You got to try to win now because of Kirill. Well, I agree with that if you're trying to win now in the playoffs. So, if the Wild finishes, let's say they just pop up and surprise us a lot, and let's say they finish second in the Central Division, okay? But they get bounced in the first round again. Kirill Kaprizov is not going to say, you know what, another great regular season. Wasn't that fun, boys? So this whole conversation about, well, you've got to capitalize now. Yeah, it's true in the playoffs. But there's nothing, a successful regular season followed by a first-round ouster, I would rather finish as a wild card team and make a playoff run. That's a lot more, if you need that to sort of keep Kirill engaged here, that's what's going to keep him engaged.
Yep.
It's not going to be, we played hockey so well October through April 5th and then went in the toilet. He ain't staying for that. I don't blame him. But I also think there's going to be, coming up a lot of components as well on this team. Young components, Russian players. I think there's going to be a compelling case to be made for him to stay. He might leave regardless. But when you look at the pipeline and some of the young Russian players, I think that there's also going to be a pretty good case to be made that, in 3 years, he stays here and is the captain and decides that this is the best place. But all of that has to be with an eye towards playoff success, not, oh man, we got 105 points again, and then we lost in the playoffs.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they have been one of the most successful regular season teams in the NHL over the last 10 years. And I think
it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean squat anymore.
Exactly.
And so unless you can prove you can make a lengthy playoff run, and honestly, the Russian pipeline thing, I half jokingly said to Jesse, I was like, should we just get Putin a suite at this point? For God's sakes, they're drafting all these Russian kids.
Kindly by the United States.
No, I don't think they would either. But the fact that you're getting guys that are from Russia that embrace Kirill too probably does help the case. It's not like he's completely ousted there. And this is the last year, at least on paper, of the Zuccarello contract too, so which is also a big one that they get to figure out. So can they figure out also a way to make Kirill happy post Matt Zuccarello, which I think they'll be just fine without Matt Zuccarello.
Yes. Last thing, Kalen Addison, whose name you brought up a couple of times so far. If Dean and Bill still aren't sure, don't bring him back.
Yeah.
Like, he's a power play guy, and I actually think he does a decent job there. The John Klingberg thing was...
It was worth a shot, but it didn't work.
Exactly right. But if they are going to pull this thing of, well, he's still going to pay the price. If he screws up, he's going to be benched again. Just be done with it then.
Yeah.
Make your decision. If he's going to play and be a power play guy, awesome. If he's not, find a different power play guy. So,
yeah, I would probably just trade him at this point. And look, I still liked that trade that they did with the Zucker trade. That was now 4 years ago. Time flies, but I still liked that trade on paper, and that was a good trade for them. And if Kalen Addison didn't end up hitting, it is what it is, man. It's not like it's a franchise-altering trade. You had to make a move, you did. And if Kalen Addison's not going to be part of the long-term plans, you may as well try to sell as high as you can possibly on him right now.
Absolutely. Good stuff, Dex, and tell the people what they need to know.
Yeah, hit the subscribe button. This has been Judd's Hockey Show. We actually had some breaking news to talk about. Maybe if they trade Kalen Addison by this time next week, we'll have another episode to come at you with. But
Love it.
Hit the subscribe button for daily Minnesota sports entertainment. Head on over to Purple Daily. Plenty of Vikings training camp thoughts, flagrant howls, also some Timberwolves talk on this channel with Phil and Kyle. And we will be back next week.